North of him, somewhere in the wooded distance, Darren Tremaine heard Li Peng's burst of machine gun fire. It rattled a second time, then went silent. Then the hush of rain began to roll over him, pelting down into the snow-covered streets of San Quentin. Darren looked up as the warm water began to come in earnest, quickly saturating him. He heard a steady clop of hooves resounding through the streets toward him. He reined Bathsheba in and squinted through the curtain of falling water as Brian Hughes, riderless horse, trotted into the roundabout ahead of him. Darren spurred Bathsheba, cantering her into the intersection. Brian's bay stopped and stood on tenterhooks as Bathsheba carefully approached. The horses greeted each other, care-filled, and Darren was able to lean over Bathsheba's neck and get hold of the bay's dangling reins. He looked north, in the direction from which Brian's horse had come. Around a bend, 50 yards distant, he saw men coming toward him on the run. Darren dropped the bay's reins and angled slightly to his left, giving himself a broad range of attack. He raised his saber, ready to strike. Rupert Fuchs heard the crackle of the machine gun. He slowed, listening, trying to get a bearing on where precisely the sound came from. But after the second salvo died away, there was nothing. Wolfgang, Durant, and the others caught him. They too had heard the rattle of the MG. "Lewis gun," said Renoir. Wolfgang nodded. "Yeah." Rupert looked at Wolfgang, questioning. "Our compatriots?" he asked. The warm rain began spitting down. Wolfgang shook his head. "It doesn't matter. We must keep going. Whoever that is, we cannot help them any more than they can help us. One machine gun won't stop what's coming." Rupert nodded. The MG fire had come from somewhere to the northwest. Rupert realized it was a self-centered inclination, but he fervently hoped that sound would pull the hangmen and the German shepherds in that direction. At least the man who had pulled that trigger was armed, which was more than Rupert could say for himself. He looked back up the snowy avenue for the dead men and their dogs, but saw no sign of them. He quickened his pace, leading Durant's band south. He knew the canal was close. As the hot rain began to come down in sheets, Rupert saw the trail on the ground ahead of him revealed. Fresh hoof prints, darkening as water filled the depression the hooves had stamped in the snow. Rupert waved Wolfgang to him and pointed them out. "A horse? Perhaps we are close to the boat." Durant, Renoir, Jonah, and James caught them. "What is it?" Durant asked. "A horse," Wolfgang replied. "Our saviors from the Siegfried line?" "Maybe, maybe not." "Do they lead to the canal?" asked Durant. Wolfgang translated for Rupert. The little sapper nodded. "Yeah, yeah." The sharp report of dogs barking in the distance sent a cold razor of terror up Rupert's spine. "Oh, shoot! Oh, Lord! Them hounds you saw are coming," said James Cox. Rupert did not need to be told what to do. He ran, following the hoofprints south. The canal was near. He had no idea if it offered sanctuary or not, but as long as he had 2 feet and a destination, he would run. His legs propelled him toward the final roundabout that he knew would take them to the waterfront itself. They were closer than he had thought. As he entered the intersection, he caught sight of a horseman in the dark, rising up before them, saber cocked above his head. Rupert tripped, sliding to a stop in the melting snow, hands held up to ward off the coming blow. "Wait!" Wolfgang cried out. "We are with you! We are with you! He told us to come here!" Darren Tremaine held his hand as he studied the men before him. Durant, Jonah, James, and Renoir came running into the intersection behind Wolfgang and Rupert and stopped, breathless. Darren lowered his guard. "You all made it through?" he asked. "Yes," Durant said. "There were others with us at the tunnel, but we haven't seen them since then. Don't know if they got through or not." Darren nodded and lowered his saber. "The barge is not far. You're being pursued." Durant stepped forward. "Yes." The sounds of the dogs barking echoed again. "How many?" Darren asked. 5 men, 3 dogs," said Wolfgang. Darren considered it. 5 men was a lot to tackle on his own. "Did you see another cavalryman?" He pointed toward Brian's mount. "The man riding this horse." Rupert recognized the word cavalryman. He turned to Wolfgang. "A cavalryman? Yeah, I saw one." Wolfgang nodded. "He says he saw one." "Where?" asked Darren. "Dead. At the Basilica. They hung him," Rupert said. Wolfgang's translation cut Darren deep. Jesus wept. "Right. The canal's 2 blocks south. The barge should be just there. Loose the starboard bow line and the breast lines, get the boiler running, and prepare to cut the stern free." Durant nodded. "Go," Tremaine said. "Be ready to run by the time I reach you. I can't fight 5 men and 3 dogs, but I'll try to run them in the opposite direction, then turn and meet you at the barge." "To the canal," Wolfgang told Rupert. Rupert Fuchs needed no more direction than that. He ran. The others followed. Darren looked at Brian's horse. He settled Bathsheba, then quickly dismounted and approached the bay. It only took a moment to throw the flap over the saddle and unbuckle the billets from the girth. He pushed the saddle up and over. The shining leather and wool blanket splashed into the slush. Darren undid the throat latch buckles and pulled off the crown and bridle, dropping them alongside the saddle. The big horse shied away, then turned and ran, disappearing into the rain, her sleek coat lit by a burst of lightning. Then she was gone. Rain poured down. The cobblestones were quickly clearing as the snow melt joined the rain, turning the streets into a canal of their own. Darren climbed onto Bathsheba's back and turned her toward the coming dogs and dead men. "Last run, girl. Last run. Get me through this, and you'll be free and clear to join your mate. Death or glory, eh?" Darren tightened his grip on her reins, then kicked her flanks, charging toward the dogs and whatever was coming with them. At the Basilica, the German shepherds had been the first to catch Rupert's scent. It overwhelmed the sharp bite of adrenaline and blood left in the air by the hanged men. The little sapper's warmth and lividity beckoned them. Little boy Halstead stood over the footprints in the snow, holding his broken spear in one hand and Brian Hughes' long bamboo lance in the other. Harlan, Daddy Cox, Sheriff Coombs, and Big Don McMaster joined him. Little boy Halstead gave the dogs their command. "Seek." The 3 leapt forward, running in Rupert's steps. Halstead and the others followed fast behind them. When they discovered Rupert's tracks, joining a host of others, and realized there were at least 5 more men with him, they were filled with joy. 6 more bodies adorning the Basilica would bring perfect balance to their work of art. They heard the distant roar of Peng's MG, but it was not close enough to draw their focus from the task at hand. The warm rain began coming down. It seemed the exact temperature of human innards. Their palates slobbered at the thought of running down the men ahead of them and hanging them high. Darren Tremaine rode hard, saber stretched out before him, horse and rider moving as one. He saw the dogs first, when a steady pulse of lightning hit the flooded cobblestones. The 3 German shepherds, Vulpine, splashed toward him, sending sprays of water in their wake as the rain rushed down from above. Another flash, and he saw Dr. Halstead's burnt flesh and sharp spears, and the 4 men running just behind him, screaming for blood as they came. Darren balanced himself with his knees and thighs as Bathsheba galloped for him one last time. They blew past the dogs, who tried to nip and turn Bathsheba, but she listened to Darren's intent and pressed on toward the real danger. His knees guided her on an attack bearing that would keep Halstead and his spears on her right. The lightning and thunder were now a steady strobe and roar. The charging dead men faltered in their pace as the horse's true power revealed itself in galloping strides. Darren raised the saber overhead, ignored the sharp lance points, and slashed down toward Halstead. He felt the saber bite flesh, then he was swinging it up and over his head, cutting through the rainfall, high in the saddle, coming over and down again in rhythm and finding Big Don McMaster's German body. The blow struck hard, sending Big Don face first, skittering into the overflowing gutter. Darren reined in Bathsheba, and she wheeled effortlessly, facing the way they had come, eyes rolling with her own adrenal surge. More lightning lit the street. The 5 dead men were not giving chase. The 2 he had struck were both back on their feet and running after Durant and his companions. Darren slid his saber into its sheath and pulled the lance off his back. He spurred Bathsheba, and she charged after them. Darren rode like a knight in tourney, lance tucked under his arm, tight to his side. He aimed it at Big Don's back and rode him down. It speared straight through. The lance head and more than 2 feet of bamboo burst through his chest. Big Don grabbed hold of the shaft protruding from his sternum with both hands as he fell, wrenching it out of Darren's grasp, nearly pulling him off Bathsheba's back in the process. Darren reined in and reached for his saber hilt, guiding Bathsheba back toward the downed man. He drew the saber and ready to finish Big Don. The broken lance that cut down Philip Halstead hit Darren Tremaine in the kidney. He screamed. Bathsheba felt his pain and terror. She bolted as he slumped forward in the saddle, holding tight to her mane with both hands. Darren stayed in the saddle, forcing himself not to black out from the pain. He looked back. They had turned. They were running in Bathsheba's trail. They smelled Darren's blood now and wanted it. The other living men would wait. Darren leaned forward, slumped over the spearhead that was sticking out of his belly, holding tight to the saddle horn as Bathsheba ran.